Good morning. Welcome to Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. Welcome to the soul of Sunday. We are Unitarian Universalists. Ours is a historic faith with a progressive theology. We affirm the worth and dignity of every being, and that we are all deeply interconnected. We are bound to one another not by creed, but by covenant. And we are called to answer the call of love with open minds, open hearts, and open hands. Whoever you are, those of all nations, all creeds, all colors, all kinds of love, you are welcome here. As we gather, we acknowledge that Arlington Street Church occupies the ancestral homeland of the Massachusetts. By making this land acknowledgement, we recognize, honor, and affirm the sovereignty of all First Nations peoples. Dear ones, welcome to our Zoomers, and welcome to the congregation gathered here in the sanctuary. That great cold has released its hold on Boston. I hope all of you are cozy this morning. I want to say a very special thank you to Martin and also to Jana for the beautiful red tulips in Joseph and Eileen's memory. Surely they are here in spirit. Presente. Very special thanks to our volunteers here in the sanctuary today, tech team, Great Doors team, greeters and ushers, the worship team, musicians, the Arlington Street Church Choir, and Mark David Buckles, our director of music. I want to say a special thanks to Wendy and Kellyanne, standing up there in the back. They stepped in as lead ushers this morning as Philip continues to recover from COVID and pneumonia and 3 days in the hospital. Get well soon, dear Philip. Thank you, friends. Following the guidance of the Boston Public Health Commission, we're continuing to mask and physically distance in the sanctuary. Please keep your mask over your nose and mouth the whole time you're inside to protect our most vulnerable spiritual companions. Thank you. For those of you who are new to Arlington Street, a very special welcome to you. Those of you in the sanctuary will find welcome cards in the pew racks. You can hand yours to an usher or drop it in the basket at the great doors as you leave. For those of you in the Zoom room, please fill out a connection card. The link is in the chat. It includes the option to request a link to a recording of today's sermon. Since we can't greet all of you personally, Beth and I would love to follow up with a virtual hello. Whether you've been coming here for years or today is your first time at Arlington Street, welcome home.
Good morning. If you haven't already downloaded today's order of service, it's available in the chat and on the home page at ascboston.org. If you're here in person, there are also printed copies at the great doors. Also on the home page, you'll find a link to Sermon Bingo, and feel free to play along as Reverend Kim preaches. As we begin our greetings, I invite the Zoomers and those here in the sanctuary with a device handy to please say hello in the chat and tell us where you're Zooming in from today. And now, Sandy is going to turn the camera on the incarnate congregation as we wave and smize at each other, as well as our friends in the Zoom room. And you all in the Zoom room can wave and smile back. Hello, friends. Let's engage that Arlington Street spirit of welcome that transcends physical distance as we greet one another heart to heart. Our opening hymn is number 1000 in the Teal hymnal, Morning Has Come, which will be led by Hannah. The words can be found in the order of service and in the chat. Please stand now as you are willing and able, and let's sing together, Morning Has Come. It is now time for our treasured ritual of sharing community candles of sorrow and joy. These candles were submitted on our website by the Friday evening deadline. If you didn't submit your candle and have a joy or sorrow to share this morning, please wait until the third candle is lit, the silent candle, and then type your joy or sorrow in the chat. Zoomers are invited to light silent candles at home. Those in the sanctuary are invited to light a silent candle at the table, up at the front of the Gleason, at the right at the Gleason podium. In addition to sharing our sorrows and joys this morning, let's reach out to one another in the week ahead, staying connected. May these times remind us of how very precious this beloved community is. We need one another. Whether together or apart, may we stay very close. And now, in the spirit of invocation, let's join in singing Sanctuary. The words are printed in your order of service and in the chat.
Some of us come today with heavy hearts. We open our hearts to you.
Our first candle of sorrow is from the Arlington Street congregation for the senseless killing of Tyree Nichols. Our hearts go out to his family and to this broken nation. Our final candle of sorrow today is a candle of concern from Laura Pattison. A candle of concern for my sister, Lynn Pattison, in Colorado, whose cancer has metastasized to her lung and 2 other places close to the original cancer site. She will start major chemo in 2 weeks. Thanks for keeping her in your thoughts.
And some of us come today in joy. We share your joy.
Our first candle of joy is from Richard Abreu. A candle of enormous joy for my niece Alex, who had her surgery to remove a tumor on her spine. It was a great success. She's up and walking, but the previous numbness in her feet is gone. There are still weeks of recovery ahead, but my family thanks everybody that sent positive thoughts her way. They worked. Our final candle of joy is from the Arlington Street congregation to welcome home Janice Alomar. Janice has spent the last 4+ years teaching at Thailand's largest public university. Welcome home, Janice.
Oh
sorrows and all the joys we hold in our hearts, we light a silent candle to remember and to rejoice. May the peace of this sanctuary enter into our hearts as we share a quiet moment together, breathing our prayers for ourselves, for one another, for our country, and for the world. Amen.
Let's join now in saying together the affirmation and covenant of this beloved spiritual community. The words are printed in your order of service and in the chat. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de nuestra congregación, y el servicio es nuestro regalo. Esto es a lo que nos comprometemos, convivir en paz, hablar nuestras verdades con amor, y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Our next hymn is number 77, Seek Not Afar for Beauty. I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit, and sing along. I think the lyrics are printed in the order of service. There's a couple changes from what's in the hymnal. And also, if you're a music reader and looking at the hymnal, it's a completely different melody. So don't get too confused by that. But it's one we've done here a number of times. Really beautiful melody. And Julie's going to play it for us first on the violin so you can hear how it goes. Here we go. Seek not afar for beauty, lo it glows in dew-wet grasses all about thy feet, in birds in sunshine, childish faces sweet, in stars and mountain summits topped with snows. Go not abroad for happiness, behold, it is a flower blooming at your door. Bring love and laughter home and evermore. Joy shall be yours as changing years unfold. In wonder workings o'er some bush of flame, we look for truth and fancy it concealed. But in earth's common things, love stands revealed, while grass and flowers and stars spell out God's name. While grass and flowers and stars spell out God's name.
In Jane Wagner's one-woman show, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, Lily Tomlin starred as Trudy, an elderly woman who walks the avenues of Manhattan carrying all her worldly goods in a couple of plastic grocery bags and carrying on a loud dialogue with an invisible group of visitors from out of space, whom she calls her space chums. As their guide and interpreter of the strange ways of the human species and the vagaries of human culture, Trudy is constantly holding up a can of Campbell's soup in one hand and the famous Andy Warhol painting of a can of Campbell's soup in the other hand, trying to convey to the extraterrestrials the difference between soup and art. This is soup, she keeps repeating. This is art. Soup, art. They fail to grasp the difference. The other thing Trudy wants them to understand is the enigma of human emotional response. How would you explain goosebumps? More importantly, how would you bring someone to experience that curious combination of awe and dreadful wonder that causes our hair to stand on end? Trudy decides to take her space chums to the theater for their final evening on Earth, hoping for goosebumps. In the very last scene, Trudy stands alone on the stage. Her friends have left behind a note, which she reads aloud. Dear Trudy, thanks for making our stay here so jam-packed and fun-filled. What we take with us into space that we cherish the most is the goosebump experience. Did I tell you what happened at the play, says Trudy? We're in the back of the theater, standing there in the dark. All of a sudden, I feel one of them tug at my sleeve, whispers, Trudy, look. I say, yeah, goosebumps. You definitely got goosebumps. You really like the play that much? They said it wasn't the play that gave them goosebumps. It was the audience. I forgot to tell them to watch the play. They'd been watching the audience. Yeah, to see a group of strangers sitting together in the dark, laughing and crying about the same things, that just knocked them out. They said, Trudy, the play was soup, the audience, art. I like to think of them out there in the dark, Trudy says, watching us. Sometimes we'll do something and they'll laugh. Sometimes we'll do something and they'll cry. And maybe one day we'll do something so magnificent, everyone in the universe will get goosebumps. Awe is powerful. And awe is so mysterious. How do we express the feeling of seeing a shooting star? The amazement of watching a toddler take their first steps, that collective effervescence of singing along at a concert with a huge crowd of people who also know every word. Up until 15 years ago, scientists were studying emotions essential to human survival, like fear and disgust. But they were basically uninterested in awe. They knew that throughout the span of evolution, we've met most of our basic needs not individually, but socially. We've survived thanks to our capacity to cooperate, form communities, and create culture that strengthens our sense of shared identities. That scientific aha came with the realization that the provenance of so much that is human, music, art, religion, science, politics bind us together with awe. They finally took notice. Awe is still very much an elusive emotion, but we do know now that it transforms our bodies and our brains. It is awe that cools our immune system's inflammation response, sharpens our reasoning, and orients us toward bigger ideas and new insights. Awe, that feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our understanding. Awe is a transformational, vital force in our lives. Dacher Keltner, a professor of psychology at UC Berkeley and the director of the Greater Good Science Center, just published his book, Awe. He and Professor Yang Bai gathered stories of awe from people in 26 countries. And this is hilarious. He says, "We cast our net broadly because of the scientific concern about weird samples." That's weird spelled out all in caps, which is to say those comprised disproportionately of people who are, here comes the acronym, Western, educated, individualist, rich, and democratic. Weird. They received 2,600 narratives by speakers of 20 languages. And what was the largest common denominator that led people around the world to feel awe? Do you want to guess? Nature? Listening to music? No. What leads us most often to feel awe is other people's courage, kindness, strength, or overcoming. After an utterly ill-spent youth, Lewis Scott was sentenced to 229 years to life in jail. Incongruously, it saved his life. Somehow, once he was on the inside, he was transformed by an idea, a way that he could bring peace to the confines of prison and stir an awareness of those of us on the outside about the kindness and courage of those on the inside. He has produced award-winning shows for California's San Quentin State Prison Radio on the illusions and costs of gang loyalty, on living and dying with hepatitis C, and on the stigma of AIDS in prison. Lewis Scott is the only prisoner to have been elected to the Society of Professional Journalists, and he's become a facilitator of restorative justice, a discipline grounded in principles of nonviolence. Restorative justice is a cultural archive of moral beauty with a long past, founded on the conviction that all people, including those who have murdered and those who have lost loved ones and are consumed by thoughts of revenge, can overcome and find peace. It centers on perpetrators recognizing the harm they have caused, taking responsibility for their actions, making amends, and expressing remorse. A central practice of restorative justice is the talking circle, in which individuals take turns sharing while others simply listen. One day when Dacher Keltner was visiting San Quentin, one of the people to speak in the circle was former white supremacist Todd Ashker, who had lived for 28 years in solitary confinement at a maximum security prison. From his cell, talking into a vent, Todd Ashker had begun to speak to leaders of Mexican-American and Black gangs in cells nearby. He called for a truce, among rival gangs. He pressed small notes into the handle of the broom he used to clean parts of the prison. The notes would make their way into the hands of other prisoners, who in turn passed them on. This vast, interconnected web of resistance. And then he led a hunger strike, protesting that solitary confinement is cruel and unusual punishment, and therefore a violation of the Eighth Amendment. He was joined by more than 29,000 prisoners, the largest hunger strike in United States history. They won. More than 2,000 prisoners statewide were immediately moved out of solitary, ending that inhumane treatment. When everyone in the talking circle had spoken, the men in blue rose to recite the principles of restorative justice. A silence fell over the room, a quiet, powerful moment of shared attention. And then they recited together, "I believe that violence is not a solution to any problem. I believe that every person is endowed with a sacred dignity. I believe that every person is capable of changing, healing, and being restored. I pledge to respect the dignity of every person. I pledge to overcome violence with love and compassion. I pledge to support anyone affected by crime and accompany them on their healing journey. I pledge to be an instrument of restoration, reconciliation, and forgiveness." At that last word, forgiveness, the men turned to one another to shake hands, clasp arms, chuckle softly, and make eye contact. Dacher Keltner felt awe at the resilience of the human spirit. While other people's courage, kindness, strength, or overcoming most often lead people to feel awe, nature and music are two other reliable sources. The great conservationist Rachel Carson's 1962 book, Silent Spring, is credited with advancing the global environmental movement. Rachel Carson knew the importance of awe. She wrote a remarkable essay called "Helping Your Child to Wonder," which appeared between recipes for mayonnaise and potato salad and ads for best foods in Women's Home Companion. When her sister died, the unmarried and child-free scientist suddenly found herself with a 20-month-old toddler. Her essay opens with her and young Roger wandering down to the Atlantic Ocean one wild, stormy night. Getting soaked, they laugh at the frothy waves, she writes, finding a spine-tingling response to the vast, roaring ocean and the wild night around us. Later, on a rain-drenched walk in the Maine woods, Roger delights in the spongy texture of the lichen on rocks, getting down on chubby knees to feel it and running from one patch to another, she says, with squeals of pleasure. And so Rachel Carson made the case for an awe-based approach to child rearing, imbuing a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantments of later years, the sterile preoccupation of things that are artificial, the alienation from the sources of our strength. While researching his book, Dacher Keltner had the extraordinary opportunity to ask American film director Steven Spielberg, what was awe like for you as a child? Without missing a beat, Steven Spielberg recalled that one night his dad gathered him up and hustled him into the car. They went to a field and lay on their backs on blankets. A meteor shower washed over the sky. Stephen recalls the light, the profusion of stars, how vast the night sky was, and his experiments with seeing directly or out of the corner of his eye fleeting patterns of stellar awe. It was this wonder of life, he said, that he hoped to give to others in E.T. And then he said this, we are all equal in awe. Lao Tzu wrote, from wonder into wonder, existence opens. In nature, awe is as close as a stroll or a roll. However you ambulate, it's been proven that moving through space at the pace of a saunter can inspire a consciousness that's especially receptive to awe. The idea is to try to see the world with fresh eyes, imagining you're seeing everything for the first time. British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins wrote, there is an anesthetic of familiarity, a sedative of ordinariness that dulls the senses and hides the wonder of existence. What is the best way of countering the sluggish habituation brought on by our gradual crawl from babyhood? We can recapture that sense of having just tumbled out to life on a new world by looking at our own world in unfamiliar ways. The instructions for an awe walk are to focus way out, look up at the sky and feel its vastness, and way in, look at the details of ice crystals forming on a plate glass window, or if you're in a warmer climate, at the mighty little weed pushing its way up through a crack in the sidewalk. You can take an awe walk anywhere. And if you can't keep visiting new places, just keep looking for new features in a familiar place. Henry David Thoreau, father of the modern-day staycation, wrote of the 6 square miles he called home, I have traveled a great deal in Concord. In music, awe may be in the listening or in the making of it. I love these 2 stories. Diana Gameros grew up in a big, boisterous musical family in Huaraz, Mexico. Her earliest memories are of her uncles singing Mexican folk songs of love and revolution in deep, full-chested timbres. At 13, she came to the United States to study piano and recording technology in Michigan. She became an accomplished musician and lived here undocumented for 16 years. She longed for home. When she was finally given a green card, Diana Gameros returned to Mexico to tour in her country. This is how she describes the awe of that experience, captured in the documentary, Dear Homeland. I can feel it now, she says. Estoy aquí. I am here. I am finally here. All I had to do was deeply breathe, deeply feel, and listen. Really listen. And see. Truly see. I recognize these voices. They speak my mother tongue. I recognize these colors. I was brought up by these colors. I recognize myself in this place and these sounds, those faces, that flag. Y ahora soy una con ellos. And now I am one with them. I am here in my dear, dear homeland, Mexico. Y me siento inmensamente feliz. And I feel immensely happy. Yumi Kendall is an award-winning cellist in the Philadelphia Orchestra. This is her description of grieving her grandfather, also a musician, and the awe she experienced playing Mozart's Requiem the week after he died. She says this was grandfather's piece, the Requiem. When we started playing the sixth movement, the Confutatis, which Mozart is said to have composed on his deathbed, all the tears I never shed when grandfather died came pouring out. The angry, aggressive 30-second notes from the 40 of us playing strings in unison with sharp accents are like punches. And suddenly the heavens opened up and all the light shone through, like sun rays beaming through in sound, bright white, almost blinding light. Angels singing. Grandfather was there with me, shining on us. And then the re-entrance of the fortissimo accents and missed opportunities and grief brought a new surge of anger. I became momentarily aware that I was in performance and then let it go. It's a safe place on stage. I felt the anger. I felt it subside. By the time we ended, even with my tears, I felt glowing, calm, deep sadness and peace. I felt like grandfather heard me. It was awesome. I want to close where we began with Jane Wagner's The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. In the early 90s, my friend John McDarr went to see the show when it was on Broadway. He was seated between a friend and a stranger. Not surprisingly, in typical Northeast fashion, he and the stranger had not greeted one another. The play is almost over. I like to think of them out there in the dark watching us, says Lily Tomlin's character, Trudy, of her space chums. Sometimes we'll do something and they'll laugh. Sometimes we'll do something and they'll cry. And maybe one day we'll do something so magnificent, everyone in the universe will get goosebumps. And at just that moment, Trudy turns around to face the back of the bare gray stage wall and throws her arms wide open. Suddenly, the wall becomes an inky black sky, sparkling with thousands of stars. The audience surged to its feet. John McDarr found himself both laughing and crying. And then he says, for the first time that evening, I became aware of the stranger to my left, who was also on his feet, engulfed in the same emotion. And spontaneously, we threw our arms around each other and hugged. Beloved spiritual companions, we are all equal in awe. From wonder into wonder, existence opens. I wish for you goosebumps. Amen.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. While I don't personally agree with the logical syllogism that beauty necessitates the existence of God, this song for me captures not a logical conclusion, but an emotional experience. That feeling of awe, of goosebumps, of art somehow being more than soup, of being so gobsmacked by beauty that we feel a connection to something beyond ourselves, something that makes us want to sing and dance and give thanks just for the chance to be a part of it all for a little while.
Over my head, I hear music.
Thank you to the Arlington Street Church Choir and all our musicians. Arlington Street is entirely self-sustaining. It's up to us. Our generosity continues to be astounding. Thank you for your commitment to our staff, our building, and our beloved spiritual community. Each Sunday, we share a collection plate with a partner in the mission of love, service, justice, and peace. This month's beneficiary is Renewal House, Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministries Emergency Shelter and Advocacy Series for individuals and families escaping domestic violence. Thank you for your generosity. In my high school currently, I am the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. In the winter, my main task has been planning something called Action Hours for the school. In Action Hours, everyone comes together to sign petitions, call government officials, and fill their calendars with local events for activism. And I am forever grateful for how Arlington Street Church guided me on a journey of activism to help the world in whatever small or large ways I can. As always, it's great to be here this morning. Please take a moment now to join me in giving to our beloved spiritual community and filling our virtual collection plates. You can give online by scanning the QR code in the order of service, or go to ascboston.org or Venmo at Arlington Street. You can mail a check to the church or use the envelope at the pews, which can be handed to Reverend Kim, to me, or to any of our ushers after the service. Thank you for your generosity.
Well, that was one take on Awe, and here's another one from Jim Henson and Kermit the Frog. One, two, three. Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that wishes would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? And what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep And have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La da da dee da da do, la da 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 dee da do.
Thank you, Mark David and Julie. Arlington Street Church's Transformation Team for Racial Justice invites you to go to our website to register for Beloved Conversations, a Unitarian Universalist program for people seeking to embody racial justice as a spiritual practice. The Transformation Team will be hosting a drop-in meeting next Sunday after the service, and my mom will be there. Learn more at ascboston.org and join us. There are weekly gatherings on Zoom for loving kindness, meditation, poetry, yoga, and writing. In addition, on Wednesday afternoon at 12:30, Professor Helms and Reverend Kim host our literary salon, the Wednesdays, reading Wadsworth. The poems are listed at ascboston.org. Every Wednesday at 4, Reverend Kim and Reverend Beth host a tea party with a conversation prompt. This week's prompt is, what is one of your favorite things about where you're from? And at 7:30 on Wednesday evening, Reverend Kim and John O'Connor co-host a panel on Zoom featuring John's sister, Peg O'Connor, about her new book, Higher and Friendly Powers, Transforming Addiction and Suffering. For those of you in the Boston area who love to sing, come join the choir. Mark David holds rehearsals here at church on Thursday evenings at 7. Information and Zoom room links for these gatherings are at ascboston.org. To attend any of them, you don't have to be a member, you don't even have to turn your video or talk if you don't want to, and they're all free. All are always welcome. Following the service, everyone is welcome to come join the virtual coffee hour. If you'd like to participate, please answer yes to the breakout room invitation that will appear on your screen. If you're here in the sanctuary, you'll need to go to the Zoom room before the Postlude begins. Reverend Kim and I will be at the center aisle. If you're here in person after virtual coffee hour, please come say hello and linger to visit. Thank you to all who joined in today's service and to all those who made it possible. Remember, we're all in this together.
Thank you, James. Choir, come on up. Our final hymn today is Blue Boat Home by the great Peter Mayer. Took Ye Old Beautiful Church Tune, Hifredal, slowed it down, wrote some new lyrics, this beautiful text about us sailing through the universe, a reminder of how small we are and how connected we are to everything. I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit, and let's sing this song together. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. sail and moon my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or ports have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Before our benediction, I invite those of you in the Zoom room to please reach out your hands and touch the sides of your square. And for those of you in the sanctuary to please raise your hands, palms out. Let's send loving kindness to the people to your left and to your right. Send loving kindness to the person on either side of you, to the people on either side of them. Send out love into this beloved spiritual community and feel it coming back to you. Love is the spirit of this congregation. And now for our benediction, I invite you to put your hands over your heart in namaste. I bow to the divine in you. From Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Someday, after mastering winds, waves, tides, gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, we will discover fire. I wish for you goosebumps. Let us keep this faith, beloveds, and pass it on. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts. I love you. Amen.
Your people are mine. Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.